acting allowed me to behave appallingly. It allowed me to be whatever I could possibly be. Make sure you've given yourself enough time, get there a little bit early, find a quiet spot, go to the loo. Don't try not to get distracted by too much chat. When you audition, you're always pitching yourself.
Of course.
Whether you're auditioning in the room, which is favourite, or whether you're auditioning on a self-tape, you're setting off a self-tape.
Today's guest is Annie Tyson, one of the UK's leading acting teachers who taught on the flagship acting courses at Drama Centre and RADA for over 10 years. I first met Annie 24 years ago when she directed me in the first term of my drama school training, and since then she's gone on to become a friend and mentor. It's great to have her on the show. If you like what you hear, please like and subscribe. It will mean the world to me and will make sure that this podcast reaches as many people as possible. There's great stuff in here. Enjoy. Annie Tyson, welcome to the show. So my first question for you is, what is the most important thing that you have ever pitched for?
Oh, golly. What is the most important thing that I've ever pitched for? I think the most important thing that I've ever pitched for was selling myself as the course director for the BA Acting at Drama Centre London.
Interesting.
I think if I'm, as an actor, my background is in acting. When you audition, you're always pitching yourself.
Of course.
Whether you're auditioning in the room, which is favourite, or whether you're auditioning on a self-tape, you're setting off a self-tape, or whether you're auditioning on a Zoom call, but preferably in the room, you're always pitching yourself. So by the time I'd reached that stage in my life where I was willing to take on a different creative path for all kinds of reasons, I got used to pitching myself. I got used to pitching myself for roles via audition. Yeah. And yes, some were more important to me or more meaningful to me than others. The things that one wants desperately, one usually doesn't get, in a way, with acting. And the things that you are kind of fairly cool with and you think, oh, well, it might happen, it might not happen. I'll just go in there. I've done my prep. I'll do my best. I'll try and be... I'm kind of cool about it. They're the ones you get. Yeah. But I really did want the job as the course director at Drama Centre because it was the school that I trained at. It changed my view of the power of storytelling and its place in the world. Or it gave me a much more focused... when I trained there, it gave me a much more focused idea. It was much less about being stage struck and being romantic about being an actor, as it was about actually the purpose of it. The school was a massive influence on opportunity, which I have to say I never ever dreamt I would. It would never even enter my head in the early stages of my career that I would ever think about doing such a thing. But when the opportunity arose and I thought I could make a difference, and it was an opportunity to work with some people that I valued very highly. It was really important to me to get that job. So that's the most important pitch for me.
And what's the one that's got away? If you think back to all of the things that you mentioned, really wanting stuff, what do you think? Oh wow, that would have changed.
Yeah, this was an acting job. This was to play. This was an acting job. So I suppose it's, the one that got away, the one that I didn't make that I thought I would, which was kind of the difficult thing, was to play the mother, which is an absolutely tub-thumping part, not a tub-thumping, but an extraordinary part in a play by D.H. Lawrence called The Daughter-in-Law. And I absolutely thought it had my name on it. And so did an awful lot of other people. And I didn't get it.
It's hard, isn't it? The
Oh,
kind of coming back from those moments. We can delve into that a little bit later, but
well,
it
it's
takes a lot of
extraordinary,
resilience.
really, because I was old enough to know better. I was old enough not to let the disappointment and the frustration and the sheer fury get to me. But I sort of went into a kind of terrible decline for about a week, and then I had to pull myself out of it and say, "Come on,
Exactly. Get back on the
sort
horse.
yourself out. You've got stuff to do in your life."
So you've already mentioned Drama Centre, and you are one of the UK's leading acting teachers. You never start out thinking I'm going to be an acting teacher, and you've had a kind of
Well, I
interesting
didn't. No, I certainly
journey
didn't.
to get there. So take us back to the beginning. Did you always want to be an actor? Is that how this journey started?
Um, well, I don't know what I wanted to be until I wanted to be an actor. I became stage struck very early. I came from an incredibly ordinary family, kind of sort of working class, sort of aspirational working class family on Merseyside, on the Wirral. My my parents were stymied in their educations by the war, obviously, and my father certainly should have gone to university. But the war arrived, and he joined the navy, and didn't get blown up in the Battle of the Atlantic, so that was that. My mum left school at 14 and had to work. There was absolutely no money in the family, so she had to get a job. But my mother was a highly imaginative, hugely emotional woman who lived her life through books, basically, and she would have benefited massively from further, more sustained education, particularly in the arts. And so they were very supportive of any. They 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 were dead nuts on my sister and I being well educated,
Yeah.
and not so much doing well at school, but getting the most out of education. And I was very fortunate in that they were both also very keen on books. They were very keen on music, all kinds of music, but mainly classical music. And there wasn't a great deal in our environment that was particularly luxurious or exciting, and there were no kind of exciting holidays or anything like that. There was 2 weeks in a tiny caravan like a biscuit tin somewhere in Devon every year. But what there was music, and there were books, endless books, and it was my mother's joy wherever we were, if we weren't at home, but wherever we were, to find the nearest second-hand bookshop and spend hours in there. And you'd think that some kids would find that really tedious, and yeah, fair enough. But I didn't. I absolutely loved it. And so they took me to the theatre. They took me to Liverpool Playhouse. I went regularly to Liverpool Playhouse to see matinees. We'd go to a Saturday matinee. And it sort of didn't matter what it was. There was a very wide repertoire, so we would see Shakespeare, we would see sort of West End comedies that had now been released into the regional theatre. We would see amateur operatic society productions. They took me to a lot of stuff because they enjoyed it, and they, obviously were hoping that I enjoyed it. And the thing that actually really suddenly clicked for me, well, when I say clicked, I don't know if it clicked, but it sort of blew a hole in my brain, was my father took me to see a showing of Laurence Olivier's film of Henry V, which is, you look at it now and you think this is a rather wonderful but really old-fashioned film. But I was something like 13 when he took me to see it. And it was a showing at the local library. And for some reason, he wanted to see it, so he asked me if I wanted to see it, and I said yes, it would be fine. And that was my kind of my introduction to Shakespeare. and introduction to a kind of excitement and sort of thrillingness of it. I didn't understand it all at all, but there was one scene which I will never forget, which is, weirdly enough, it's not the big scenes, it's not the Once More Under the Breach, Dear Friends, and all of the big bells and whistles scenes, you know, with him on the horse doing the voice and everything. It was the scene before the battle in which he does it as a voiceover. You just see his face, and he does it as a voiceover, and he talks about what it is to be a leader, what it is to be a king, what the responsibilities are, how he wishes he wasn't. And it's full of sort of, you know, guilt and worry and anxiety that, you know, he's leading people to their certain deaths. But it's a contemplation of a big idea, what it means to the responsibilities of being the ultimate leader, which in this case is the king. And why would this speak to a girl from the Wirral who's 13 years old? I've no idea, but I was completely hypnotised by it. I was hypnotised by the sound of his voice. I was imaginatively awakened to an idea. I mean, I can say this now, looking back at it, you know, decades down the line. You know, you can kind of deconstruct it and put a spin on it.
Yeah.
But I was just enchanted, and I thought, I want to do that. I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to speak like that. I want to be able to do that to people. I don't know whether I rationalised it like that at the time, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. I could not stop thinking about it. And from that day onwards, I started to read everything about him as an actor, and then obviously I would start to read about other people, and I would start to, demand to be to any Shakespeare that was on within the remote vicinity. I demand to be taken. You know, my brothers would go, "Oh my God,
God,
she wants to go and see them." Jesus Christ, you know. And a lot of the time they were amateur productions, and they were not, you know, they were what they were.
Yeah.
And quite often they were outdoor productions. There was a place on the Wirral where every year they would do a big outdoor production of Romeo and Juliet or A Midsummer Night's Dream, and I would absolutely demand to go. And I just became incredibly stage struck.
So
and I guess it was sort of very romantic idea, really.
Fast
But
forward
I
few
became
years.
obsessed.
Yeah, so fast forward a few years, and you find yourself auditioning for Drama Centre, which at the time was, you know, pretty edgy, new proposition in the world of acting. What was that process like? Kind of
Oh well, I mean that
stepping out
was.
of the
I mean,
childhood passion and into something that's more serious.
yeah. I mean, I spent most of my teenage years, or certainly my later teenage years, in various amateur societies that were. The range of them was enormous. So there was at the top end, there was the Liverpool Shakespeare Society, which was full of, you know, intellectuals and kind of people that you were fairly terrified of. But you know, it was a thing. And there was then there was the Birkenhead Youth Theatre, and then there would be the local church amateur drama group, which would literally be in the church hall. But there was also, at the same time, there is a relevance to this, there was also, in my mid to late teens, there was the opening of the Everyman Theatre in Liverpool.
Yeah.
Now, that was very sexy. That was in what used to be a kind of old church in Hope Street, in between the two cathedrals. And they could only perform 3 nights a week, because the other nights it was where the local groups, pop groups, beat groups as they were called at the time, would play. And it was the actors were very young, you know, not long out of drama school. They were very young. They felt like me. They felt a bit like us. And a couple of friends and I became completely obsessed with that theatre. So we sort of our allegiance to the Liverpool Playhouse, which was much more conventional, that was it. We went off to see the Sexy Boys at the Liverpool Everyman, and they had no money. They had absolutely no money at all. So we were kind of, you know, used mercilessly as coffee makers. I mean, I even sewed costumes in there. I even sort of hemmed costumes in the wardrobe. And they would have Saturday morning classes for young people, so we would go to those. And the actors would be very kind and sort of do improvisations with us. Terry Hans, who became a very eminent director at the RSC, was the artistic director. I don't know where I got the confidence from, and I was directing a play at school. I said, will you come and see my play? And he said, yeah. And I didn't believe him. And he did. He pitched up. He turned up to my school and watched this kind of strange play that I was directing and was incredibly sweet. I then was absolutely determined somehow to have a career in the theatre. My parents were a bit like, she'll get over it, she'll get over it, she'll get over it. And they sort of bought into it when I said, well, I'll do drama at university. Because the idea of drama school was kind of completely foreign.
Too far out.
I mean, it was like, no, it's not, that doesn't happen. And actually going to university didn't happen in my family either. I mean, I had a cousin who went to training college, but there was nobody in our family who'd gone into higher education like that. So they were very keen for me to go to university. And I said, well, I'll go to university as long as I can study drama. And at that time, we're talking 1967, so it is a very long time ago. There were only 4 universities that did drama. And there was only one university, which was Birmingham University, that did a single honours drama degree. If you wanted to do drama at university, you had to do drama so you did drama in English or drama in French or drama in Spanish or whatever it was. But Birmingham University did a single honours drama degree, and I thought, I want that. I'll do that. And my mum and dad were going, oh, well. Anyway, I was interviewed, and I got a place, dependent on my A-levels. Well, fortunately, I got my A-levels with, the grades that would get me in. So I went off to Birmingham for 3 years, where I did nothing but plays.
Yeah.
I mean, if I think of the what I could have got from it kind of intellectually, but I didn't. I did very little studying. I mean, I read loads of plays, but I mean, writing, it was not really the right thing for me. Writing essays was an absolute nightmare. How I managed to get my rather undistinguished 2:2 degree, I don't know. But I did lots and lots and lots of plays, and we did everything we did. It was a very heady time. It was all about not just doing, plays that were terribly well known, but new plays, new writing, devised work, mad stuff. So I just threw myself into everything. And I got into the 3rd year, and we were doing Measure for Measure, which I was playing Isabella, and I knew it was working, and I had no idea why. And I said to the director, I don't know what I'm doing. I've no idea. And he kept saying, no, it's working, it's working. You seem to know how to do it. You seem to understand it. I don't know. I've had to not give you any notes or anything, but it seems to work. Everybody's very excited by what you're doing. I said, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how I do it. And so you would do it in rehearsal, and it would all be cooking. And then you'd do what you thought was the same thing in another rehearsal. And it was like, this is like dead in the water. It's like speaking in a foreign language. I've absolutely no idea what I'm doing. So I thought, I need to know what I'm doing. I need to have some sort of technique, might be a word one would use, or process, or way of working that allows me to be confident, because I wasn't confident. I could blag my way into things, but in terms of my own self-belief, I thought this is it's ephemeral. It's like, ugh. So I met somebody who was actually working as a kind of technical director at the university, and he said, oh, you need to go to Drama Centre. And he knew about it, and so he described it, and I got the prospectus. And I thought, oh, God, this is terrifying. But this is incredibly exciting. So I went and interviewed and auditioned, and the rest is history. And then I had to fight for a grant, another grant. Those were the days when we had grants. not student loans. Gosh. And I remember going to the director of drama at the local education authority, which was Cheshire Education Authority at the time, and that's a pitch. I've just remembered now. My God, that was a pitch. Maybe that was the most important pitch, actually, of my life.
Interesting,
Trying
yeah.
to get more money for. Probably that's the most important pitch. But had to wax incredibly passionate and articulate about. And it really was sitting on the doorstep and not going away until they said yes, we'll support you. So I that was my journey into actor training, because I knew I had intuition and instinct, but I realised very quickly that your instinct can just vanish.
Fail you.
So
I think that's fascinating, because in terms of creating process, in terms of being able to replicate what you do, no matter what profession you're in, whether you're in the world of business or whether you're in the world of acting, if you don't understand at a foundational level the tools and techniques that get you the result, then as you say, it's all just a wing and a prayer. Let's hope that this happens.
I mean, with acting, of course, it's how you open the doors to the imagination, how you unlock stuff. I mean, stuff may happen for free, and that's a blessing. But it's when it doesn't happen for free, and it's when you've actually got to work in depth and detail, and you've got to find there's a sort of bedrock of things that you ask yourself. Because I mean, acting, it's like all kinds of things. It's like problem solving. There's no mystique about it. The mystique is somebody's talent or their instinct, their ability to imagine and to put no skin between them and the person that they're trying to become. There's that notion of empathy, which I think is vital. This ability to be empathetic and to imagine yourself walking in somebody else's shoes. And sometimes that comes... And the reason I wanted to do that part in The Daughter-in-Law was I knew that woman inside out. I knew exactly who she was. I knew exactly what she was. There was no effort in me. It sort of sat inside me. And I knew I'd have to learn the lines. There was an awful lot of lines, but I knew that I wouldn't have to work on her because I knew her. I absolutely knew who she was. Because she was sort of me, in a weird way. Anyway, so having a set of tools, if you like, having a kind of toolkit, which when you need to solve a problem, you can solve the problem. You've got the right screwdriver, you've got the right screws, you've got the right chisel. With acting, it's you ask the questions that are going to help you unlock what you need to unlock. If you need to.
You're teaching something that is relatively intangible, and when I'm working with clients in their pitches or helping them present with more impact, that often people kind of say, well, it's just not me. It's not. I don't find this that I have the natural ability there. I suppose with most actors, you're refining a natural ability, but also you're having as a teacher to put kind of structure around that. So how did your process must have developed massively over the course of the years that you've been doing this, but what's the starting point for you in creating that scaffolding?
Well, there's a series of questions, really, and they kind of are the questions that any actor who's got any kind of imagination anyway will ask almost intuitively. But if you frame those questions, you've given yourself a kind of, and the questions are really simple, and they sort of derive from, I mean, people would say they derive from Stanislavski, the great Russian actor, director, teacher. But actually, I'm a bit of a theatre history nerd as well. I mean, I'm sort of a nerd, a geek is probably the best way of describing it, to the point of boring the arse off many people with my theatre history knowledge. But if you go back over, you know, the notable actors and actresses in history, and you read biographies or you read comments about them, it is extraordinary that they're all asking those questions in their own way. They're articulating those questions. So I think all that Stanislavski did really was to kind of articulate them.
Yeah.
And the questions are, well, the first question, you'll know about this, the first question is, well, who am I? Who is this person? And that's your whole history, background, biography. The play will give you, if you're lucky, the play will give you lots and lots of clues. There will be lots of things that are in the play that tell you something about this person that you're trying to become. Or you might well, if you're, I don't know, doing a play by Samuel Beckett or somebody like that, you've got to kind of really
make it up,
do some imaginative work. But, you know, very simple questions. You know, who am I? What's my background, my history, my family, my likes, my dislikes, my everything about me. You know, how old am I? What sex am I? You know, what are my relationships? Well, that's one of the questions. And then, you know, where am I? Where is this taking place? Where's the play taking place? Where's the scene taking place? Is it when is it happening? Is it morning? Is it night? Is it June? Is it December? Is it in the middle of the week? Is it, because place has an effect on you. Mm-hmm. Place works on one imaginatively. Time has an effect on one. So, you know, if you're playing a scene that happens at, you know, very, very late at night or in the early hours of the morning, it's going to be different to if you're playing it at midday, you know. So, you know, who, where, when, what has just happened, what happened before the play begins, or if you're doing a television play or a series or a film or whatever, or a radio play, you know, what's the backstory leading up to this moment? And you know, if you're playing a scene in the middle of a play, you've got the run up to that scene, so what's that story? But, you know, what happens before the play begins? What has just happened before I open my mouth? So who, where, what, why, when, what has just happened? And the big question, of course, what do I want? What am I doing in the scene? What am I physically doing? And also, what am I doing to, and this is the most important thing, what am I doing to my stage or scene partner?
Yeah.
Because I want something. I want in some way to persuade them of a different point of view. I want to get them to come with me to so-and-so, or I want to get them to, you know, ditch their terrible girlfriend or their terrible boyfriend, or I want them to hand over the inheritance, or, you know, change their will in favour of me, or I want them to disappear from my life and never be seen again, or, you know, how am I changing that person? So the attention is always outly directed. It's always ironically, you're not concerned with me. You're absolutely concerned with the other person. Yeah. And I've become more and more, in my work, I've become more and more attuned to it. Don't worry about what you're feeling. Worry about what you're doing to the other person. Get what you want.
That translates so much into other worlds as well, because it's. Yeah. I talk a lot about this idea of emotional intention and what are you trying to make the audience feel.
Exactly.
And what are you trying to do? What's the outcome? You know, do you want them to sign on the dotted line? Do you want to guarantee the next meeting?
Exactly.
And when you can take that spotlight off yourself and stop
Yeah.
worrying about you, it
Yeah.
completely changes things.
Yeah.
I always remember, and it's in my book, the line that you would always say in the rehearsal room was just leave yourself alone.
Oh yes, get out of the way of yourself. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's so important. We can get in
Because
our own
actually,
way.
in the end, what you want to achieve is the thing that is important, the thing that you want. We're all driven. We all want things. We all want things in life, and of course, there may be a constraint around in daily life, kind of making those desires too overt. We've got to be kind of civilized. We've got to be good people. I think one of the reasons I eventually, in my mid-teenage years, because I was a very good, very biddable girl, was that acting allowed me to behave appallingly. It allowed me to be whatever I could possibly be.
Yeah.
I could be appalling, I could be heroic, I could be tender, I could be loving, I could be weird, I could be all of the things that this is too long a conversation. All of the things that I didn't feel quite able to do in real life because I just needed to be a good girl,
Interesting.
for all kinds of reasons. But acting allowed me to be whatever I wanted to be. It was a safe way of and a glorious way of exploring the possibilities that I had. I mean, if we all went around doing the things that we really want to do in life, that'd be complete total anarchy.
Chaos.
But this thing about putting your attention on somebody else is incredibly important, and I think it can absolutely be incredibly helpful in all kinds of different worlds. So what is it you want to achieve? What you want to get somebody excited about an idea or a product or a company or you want to kind of hook people in and make them believe what you believe, and therefore you've got to kind of believe what you're doing.
Absolutely.
So all of these questions, the sort of who, what, where, when, what has just happened, what do I want, and then the next question is why do I want it? What's important? What's at the other end of all of this? What would happen if I didn't get it?
Yeah.
How high are the stakes for me? And what's the problem? What have I got to overcome? You've got to overcome maybe people's resistance to you. You've got to overcome maybe your own shyness or your own, in acting terms, that could be your own jealousy, your own tenderness. If you've got to play a scene where you've got to give somebody some very, very bad news, but you want them to be upset, it's gonna kind of affect the way in which you choose to go about doing what you're doing. And then, of course, how do I get what I want? What tactics am I going to use to get what I want? And they are going to depend very much on what's coming at you from the other person. This is in acting terms, so that everything is generated from the other person rather than you trying to kind of self-generate it. And the final question is, what are my relationships? So that's kind of it, really. That's sort of what I work with.
Yeah.
And try to apply that to any kind of play.
Another thing that I vividly remember from our time together in the training room was the Utahagen exercises and having to get comfortable in your own skin and to allow to allow other people to see you and to experience you going about your day to day.
Yes.
How important do you think that is in both the realms of acting, but also in real life?
I think a sense of ease, even if you're playing if you're playing a highly charged, highly emotional, very jagged scene, the actor has to be easeful, relaxed. You can't work through tension. You have to have an instrument that can, if you're going to play King Lear or something, or you're going to play Hamlet or Macbeth. I did a production of Macbeth at RADA. It's one of the last things I did there. And I said at the beginning of rehearsals, I said, this is a really terrifying play, and we're going to go into some, terrifying places. But in the end, it has to look easy.
Yeah.
And people do think acting is easy. They think it's easy. It's not easy. We know it's not easy. There's a lot of work goes into making it look like falling off a log. But I think this notion of ease and this lack of self-consciousness, a weird kind of paradox, that you have to be very conscious as an actor, but at the same time you have to be completely unself-conscious, not worry. And that's what ease is. Yes, get out the way of yourself. Put your eyes on the prize, which is changing somebody's mind about something, or getting somebody to buy your product or invest in your company or whatever it is. That's where the energy is going. And so in a way, you don't matter. What matters is that thing. And so how can I be easy about this? How can I be energized, but at the same time, passionate and relaxed at the same time? But those early exercises, those exercises in your own room where you're doing very simple domestic things, where you are allowing yourself to be observed, eagle-eyed observed by your colleagues, but you're not trying to prove anything. All you're trying to do is to involve yourself in what you're doing, physically involve yourself. So you're not involved in the intellect, you're not involved in thinking, you're not involved in feeling. You're simply involved in making that sandwich, or polishing your shoes, or sewing the button on the shirt, or getting ready to go off to work or to the party or to whatever, doing things in order to get what you want, and a really, really simple narrative. So it becomes a little domestic story. And you're not trying to prove how talented you are. You're simply giving yourself permission to engender a sense of truth and belief in what you're doing while being watched. So it's that lack of self-consciousness, not being afraid to be watched or listened to.
It kind of comes down to presence as well, doesn't it, to a certain extent? Is like, can you be present in that moment and not be thinking about the future or worrying about the past? Oh crap, I did that wrong, someone's going to judge me. It's can you be in that moment and be connected with the task? And then I suppose taking it to the next level is being in the moment, connected with the other person in the scene or the audience, if you're speaking to them.
And you kind of make it personal. If you're, I suppose if I was giving, I've had to do it. I've had to give presentations to a group of people. It's been mainly to do with my particular, always been to do with my world. But I've had to kind of sell an idea, and you make it personal. And you work, as it were, honestly. And I think the thing that I always used to say in class, and I'm sure I said it to your class, there isn't a right or wrong. Don't worry about getting it right. Adhere to the structure of the exercise. Kind of stay with the structure. That will save you. Because if you think, oh my God, they're all looking at me, oh God. And if you think, no, I've actually got to cut up that tomato, and I've got to make that salad, and I've got to make the dressing, and very practical things. Not no miming. The minute that you're not involving yourself with something really practical and physical, you're kind of sunk, because you have to put your attention on that. You put your attention on those activities, suddenly everything else just falls away. You can't avoid the fact that there may be 15 other eyes looking at you, or 9 other pairs of eyes looking at you. You can't pretend that people aren't there, but you're not performing. You're just doing what you say you're doing. And I remember I say all the time to my students now, look, there isn't a right or wrong. There's only what we believe. Do I believe you? Do I believe that you're getting ready to go to your sister's birthday party? And part of your backstory is that you haven't seen her for months because you've been travelling, or you've been away, or you've been busy, and she's a bit pissed off that you've not been in touch, and you're going to pitch up at her birthday party, and she's not expecting you, and you're going to take her a great big bunch of flowers and a bottle of champagne and a nice present, and you're going to get yourself ready to go. That's the story that you're telling.
Yeah.
Do I believe that?
Yeah.
You don't have to show me anything. You just have to get ready and go.
I think that idea of showing,
that sense of ease,
yeah, that kind of constantly demonstrating, or the desire to be liked for other people to respond to what you're doing is a killer, both in the world of acting and in real life as well.
Yeah.
You've been involved in the training of people that are now household names. There are lots of your former students that people would say, oh yeah, I recognise them on Netflix or from films or what have you. When you think back to those individuals, are there common traits that you saw?
Yeah, definitely. A kind of bravery. A kind of I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna try this, and actually, the earth is not going to fall in if I don't succeed. I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna bravery, energy, both external and particularly internal. You sort of feel that there's the people that I the people that are massively, successful in the public eye, if you say, that I've worked with as young actors in training. There was always a sense that there was a fantastic kind of imaginative hinterland. The ability to be able to just go, yeah, I am that person. A kind of, nothing would get in the way. No, what's the best word to say these days? No issues would get in the way of them saying, I am that murderous person, or I am that incredibly successful seducer, or I am that, wonderfully ruthless businessman, or I am, a woman who, takes care of orphan children, whatever it is. A kind of imagination, bravery, curiosity, a curiosity to know about other things, and a sort of emotional ferocity, which comes with bravery, and a degree of intelligence. And I don't mean kind of academic intelligence. I mean sort of being able to run with an idea and be transformed by an idea. I mean, the person that young actors ask me about is Tom Hardy. Of course, they would, wouldn't they? And Tom was... he wasn't... I always got on terribly well with him. He used to work hard in my classes. He didn't work hard in other people's classes for all kinds of reasons.
He was the year above me, so I remember seeing him in the first year in one of your rehearsal exercises, and his, as you say, that bravery and that commitment to try something that was a little bit left field and a little bit out there, but he absolutely,
but kind of appropriate. He never did anything that was completely stupid and like, hey, look at me, I'm being wild and wacky. It was always the interesting choice, and it was brave, and he was very fearless, and also fantastically available to an idea, but not in an academic way. And you'd say, well, I think this scene is about despair. It's what happens, or disappointment, or, you just sort of hook into an idea. And he would completely run with it. And, the same would be I'm trying to think of somebody else who's really big. Oh, somebody like Gwendolyn Christie.
Yeah.
Exactly the same quality. And in later years, an actor called Damien Maloney, who's done a huge amount of television work. And the big star at the moment, who's sort of being touted around as James Bond, is Regé-Jean Page,
Yeah.
who was the first big star in Bridgerton. I mean, he was pretty ferocious in his desire to know and explore. And actually, it cost him a lot. It could be difficult because you hit some sort of personal barriers to do with what am I prepared to show people?
Yeah.
What am I prepared to kind of offer in terms of my human capacities? Do I want the world to know that I can be like that? There's a whole load of stuff now, socio-politically about that. That's another conversation, probably not on this podcast. But there is a whole conversation going on about, well, what the hell is acting? What is one permitted to do or not to do?
I think
I find it very boring. Really.
I think the other thing that I really kind of notice about the people that you've just talked about is dedication. It's just hard work. Yeah. So I think often people from the outside in, you look at what people do and that's just talent. That's just that's easy. But I remember Tom Hardy auditioning for Band of Brothers, and I remember going upstairs into room 3 at Drama Centre, and Tom was in the makeup room next door, and he'd been in there for hours, and I was like, what's going on? And I can't remember knocking on the door, and he was prepping the lines back in the day before self-tapes and all of that. He was prepping for the audition, and he just sort of grabbed me and went, will you read this with me? Absolute focus on getting prepared for that moment, and nothing was going to get in the way.
Oh, absolutely, and really doing all of those people that I've mentioned, plus and there are lots of others, people like Emilia, Clarke. I'm trying to think of anybody more recent, but the research, knowing the research that you need to do. Now that might mean reading some books, or it might mean listening to some music, or it might mean reading more of the author or the playwright's other work, or it might mean writing your character's diary. It might mean whatever it is, whatever is going to work for you, and working like mad on the text, not to sort of decide how you're going to say it, but just to have it inside you, so that then at the audition you can get out the way of yourself. You've got all of that in that kind of imaginative hinterland. So you've actually basically asked all of the questions that I just mentioned. And it's particularly useful if you're doing I don't know who's going to see this, if you're doing some really shit awful Netflix script, which are mainly the things that come through for self-tapes from my dear husband, who's as you know, is an actor, and you get them and you think,
how do I bring
and
this
then you
to
just
life?
think, okay, I'm going to treat this absolutely seriously. Why wouldn't I? Somebody's written it. Let's just see what the meat is. Let's see what's just happened. Let's see what I want. What is my function in the scene? You do the prep. And if you do the prep, then of course you can allow things to happen to you in the moment of audition. You can allow surprises to happen. You're not on the back foot. But all of those people that you mentioned, yes, they were all absolutely focused and not lazy. They didn't take it for granted.
Let's dig into that idea of auditioning, because you and I, for our sins, spent many years on the audition panel for Drama Centre, seeing thousands of young would-be actors for 30 places or whatever they were on the BA course at the time. When people walked into the room, what was it that you were looking for in that moment that kind of was a kind of standout trait that would allow them almost to kind of get to the next round?
I think the thing that I looked for was that they were happy to be there. That actually they really wanted to be in the room with you. That they were pleased to meet you. and that they were not absolutely eaten up with nerves.
Yeah.
To the point where they just couldn't function. So the first impression when you walk into the room is a kind of sense of openness.
Yeah.
Not pushiness, not performing it, but just a sense of, okay, this is the situation. This is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to act for you.
Yeah.
And if you come in with that mindset, rather than I must get in, or I must get the job, or I must, I mean, the number of times I've had to give myself, give myself my own medicine as well. But yeah, I think a sense of being pleased to be there, genuinely pleased to have this moment.
Yeah.
And I love it. I used to love it when people used to come in and they used to offer their hand for a handshake.
Yeah.
Genuinely offer their hand. And I'd be very happy to do that.
It's that human connection, isn't it?
Human connection, absolutely human connection. Pleased to be there, not full of themselves, not showing off, but actually, this is an opportunity, no matter how short a time we have together, to make some kind of relationship, and for me to do a bit of work for you.
You mentioned that idea of nerves, and obviously in those sorts of high stakes situations, whether you're auditioning, whether you're pitching, whether you're having a conversation with your boss about a pay rise, that kind of nervous energy is kind of normal. It's kind of natural. How do you help actors prepare for those moments and find themselves more confident?
Well, I think you can never not be nervous, but I think what you give yourself time to breathe. Give yourself time to breathe. Know that you've done all the work that you could possibly do for the event, for the thing, and then go in there and say, this is an opportunity. Try not to end gain. Try not to think, this is what I say to students, try not to think about why do I want it. We know why you're here. We know why you're auditioning for drama school. We know you want to come to drama. You don't have to prove that. We know that. So what is it that we might find interesting about you? What is it that you want to show us? Think about that. Think about how much you like the material. Take your attention off yourself and onto what you're going to do, and breathe. Breathe. Make sure you've given yourself enough time. Get there a little bit early. Find a quiet spot. Go to the loo. Try not to get distracted by too much chat with other, and try not to listen to what's going on in the audition room. It depends on the circumstances, but actually just try to believe that you have something to offer, and they'll either buy it or they won't. Try not to prove yourself. Try to honour the material that you have chosen to audition with. Because it's going to be, even if you're doing a very, very famous speech that people have done countless times, it's going to be yours. It's not going to be somebody else's. It's going to be yours. So if people say, I'm going to do Hamlet, oh, what a rogue and peasant slave. My heart doesn't... I mean, a lot of my colleagues or my ex-colleagues would say, oh, God, not another one. But I never do that because I think it's going to be uniquely that person. Yeah. It's going to be yours. And I think if somebody is really, really nervous and you can see it when they come in, then I think you have to acknowledge that and say, look, you don't we're actually really nice people. We're not the firing squad. We want you to be good. We want you to be as good as you can possibly be in this very false situation. Why don't we just sit down and have a little chat for a moment? Tell us what your journey was like in, or where have you come from, what brings you here. You don't have to say too much, but you basically get them to breathe.
So I remember very vividly auditioning for Drama Centre and walking into the church with all of those nerves and all of those, all of that baggage. And just hearing this little voice say, "Run around the room." Kind of look, what the heck's going on here? And it was Yat Malgram sitting in the middle of the audition panel, co-founder of the school, and that was his instruction. Go and let off some steam. And so I very kind of reticently put my bag down and thought, well, he's the boss, I better do what he says. And as I did my lap of the church, I literally felt that anxiety start to slip away and to find myself in that moment.
It's useful to give people something physical to do like that. I mean, I sometimes used to say to people, I did it when I was auditioning at RADA, I said, jump up and down a bit.
Yeah.
Just jump up and down a bit.
Get it out. Yeah.
One has been known. I don't think one could do it now, but certainly in the past, I've said, jump up and down and shout, "Fuck it." I think people look a bit shocked, They go, no, it's fine. Nobody's going to be offended.
Yeah.
The sky is not going to fall in. We're here to have a relationship.
Absolutely. Annie, it's been fabulous talking to you. I'm kind of intrigued to think, what would your final piece of advice be to anyone who's listening, whether they're in the world of acting, whether they're in the world of business? What would you recommend that they think about?
Try to remind yourself why you joined up in the first place. What is it about this endeavour, whether it's acting or whether it's promoting a company or whether a product you believe in or whether you're trying to get you're trying to get a pay rise or whatever it is, kind of know that you're worth it. It's not about being arrogant. It's about just having that sense of, this is what I do, this is who I am, this is what I want you to listen to. Self-belief, which is not arrogance. It's you have to sort of find that self-belief. Believe that you have something worth saying. And then, further down the line, I think you have to suss out a little bit the nature of who you're dealing with. Because some audition panels are incredibly friendly, and some are, they're not. Not because they don't want to be, but just because that's not their energy.
Mm.
And therefore, you've kind of got to find a way of sussing out what people might respond to. So
and then trusting yourself, I suppose.
And then trust yourself. That you've got something that is uniquely yours and that is interesting, and people are there at the conference or at the presentation or at the audition or whatever because you've got something they want or should want. And I think, there's something in it for them if they listen to you. I think
fabulous. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast, Annie Tyson.
You're very welcome. It's been a delight. It's gone very fast.
Thanks for listening to the Why Life's a Pitch podcast. If you'd like to improve the way you pitch and communicate, I'm giving away a special gift to all my listeners. We've developed the Pitching with Impact scorecard to help you benchmark your pitch performance in 6 key areas. It will take you less than 5 minutes to complete, and you'll receive a detailed, personalised report packed full of insights and ideas to help you improve and grow. Just head over to dominiccolenso.com/scorecard to get started.